you don't really need to spend a lot of time with a salesperson as he explains to you what an Accord does. Like, you know what an Accord does, right? It's a car.
Never forget that you have the tools to build a life on your own terms. Forget the haters. This is FounderQuest.
We just had a new customer sign up just like minutes ago and said that the reason they signed up was our podcast. So,
oh, awesome.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, pro tip for all you SaaS operators out there, put a little box in your onboarding asking people how they heard about you or whatever. It's very, very informative.
Yeah, it is. And then do a podcast and wait 100 episodes.
Those steps are optional. I really do like, though, having those onboarding introductions is what we call them. We have a channel in Slack for them. And having those show up periodically is like a little endorphin rush. Like, I love seeing those show up in our Slack channel. And, we also have a cancellations channel that has the same thing with cancellation messages, and that's not quite as fun. But thankfully, we see fewer of those messages than we do the onboarding messages. But I really like having those things in Slack. It's nice to see that throughout the day.
Yeah, definitely. So I imagine this is going to be a little bit of a shorter one because we just recorded last week's podcast like on Monday and today's Thursday. So there's not as much time that's passed to let the hot takes regenerate themselves.
Well, I have a hot take for you. And I guess most hot takes are
That's what we're best at here.
Right. So I'm working on an update to the Heroku integration. So, we have a Heroku add-on. And we started that add-on back early days. So it must have been like 2012, 2013 or so. It's a long time ago. Well, in 2018, apparently, Heroku released an updated version of their API for partners like us. And it has a new provisioning thing, and you can actually call back to their API and get some information about like who provisioned the add-on and stuff like that, which is great. We haven't ever really gotten around to changing our particular add-on because it works just fine. So why bother? But I've been looking at synchronizing the Heroku pricing with our current pricing because we've done a number of pricing variations since we've launched the Heroku add-on. And so now the two sets of pricing are pretty out of sync. So as I started to get into that, I was like, well, while I'm here, how about I just, update the API, right?
Yeah.
Classic rabbit hole, right? And so I spent some time doing that and found, some interesting quirks and so on about our integration. And anyway, it's all good. Like, I got the work done and I did a PR and Josh and Kevin gave me the thumbs up and I'm ready to deploy, except I have two questions for the Heroku people about the migration. Because the migration, you got to be careful, right? Because the V1 API is not compatible with the V3 API. And so you have to store different sets of data, and the IDs in particular are different. Like, they used to pass what they call a Heroku ID, and now they pass an add-on ID. And you got to, handle the transition carefully, or else someone, that maybe they can't add on the thing. Maybe they can't start being a customer. Maybe they can't remove the add-on, which would be a problem because, or maybe they can't log in.
Or logging in, yeah, that would be frustrating.
Right. And so,
because they still get the emails.
Yeah. So my questions for Heroku around this migration revolve around this ID and handling SSO and making sure that we can still, provision and deprovision properly. Anyway, so I put two questions to them in support 2 days ago. And that's my gripe. Because
that's the holdup.
That's the holdup.
Yeah.
I can't deploy because I can't get answers to these questions, apparently. And so I'm just like, oh, okay. I understand people are busy and stuff, but I would like an answer sometime. There's no autoresponder. There's no, we'll get back to you in X amount of time. No, it's just off into the void and I'm just waiting.
Did you maybe use the legacy support page instead of the current one?
No, use the current one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Good question though. Good. I like that.
This is just another example of coding being the easy part.
Yeah. 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 And also a good example of third-party integrations causing technical maintenance burden. For example, Clubhouse, they recently renamed themselves to Shortcut, right? And so we had to, do a little bit of work there and rename stuff inside of our app. Yeah, it wasn't a whole lot of work, but it was some work. But you multiply that kind of work by the number of integrations you support, and all of a sudden, like this is ongoing maintenance work that doesn't, you're just treading water, trying to keep up with what everybody else in the world is doing, right?
Yep. And as new integration, as new apps come onto the market and everyone wants to integrate with them, you just gradually expand until you still have to support the old ones.
Right.
Yeah. I think we're definitely getting to the point where every new little thing we add is like, we're starting to feel it.
We are starting to feel it.
Yeah. And like depth of the integration is also, I've noticed, is like a big thing, because like there's a few integrations that we'd like go a lot deeper with, like GitHub, and Heroku obviously is like a good example of that. We have a lot of issues with Jira. I've seen, but who doesn't? But it does seem like the more standardized something can be, and just I don't know, when you're like integrating with OAuth and lots of custom APIs and stuff, like they're gonna switch it out on you at some point. You have to support it.
It would be nice if there was like a Zapier plus, like a next level Zapier, right? Where it just abstracts away all these differences, and you can just, it's like a universal kind of thing.
It's like,
I know that probably possibly be impossible, but
or almost like the pitch. I could see the pitch there being almost like an LTS contract for integration APIs. Like you get a contract that this API isn't going to change for like 20 years. And they'll just, we'll do the internal migrations to like keep the API the same for you.
Yeah, there you go. That's an interesting idea. I wonder how much that kind of service would cost.
I don't know. Someone at Microconf had like a service that like managed the integration side for you. Was that Jonathan? Yeah.
Cumbia. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if that was like similar. I know that wasn't quite the idea, but like it was the idea that like they like give you 100 integrations for free or whatever, like much easier to integrate with them.
Yeah. Yeah. You just plug in and all of a sudden, all these integrations.
Plug and play.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We'll link that in the show notes or see if it still exists. I haven't talked to Jonathan in a long time.
Or what? I can't, maybe that's something else.
Sounds familiar.
I don't know. I remember like having their like sticker in front of me at the table at MicroConf.
Having not gone to MicroConf or a business of software or anything else for a couple of years now, it's like it's hard to keep track of what people are doing, and because usually that's where I would see Jonathan. There was a MicroConf local happened in Portland yesterday, and I saw that. I didn't go, but in hindsight I kind of wished I had. But yeah, I saw a little bit of activity on Twitter. Yeah, it looked like they were having a fun time. And I had the same kind of feeling. It was like, I wasn't really thinking about going. But then after seeing some of the tweets, I'm like, oh, that actually would have been fun to be there. I'm in the middle of, like, my kids are home from school this week because there was a COVID case at the school. And so we've got that. That's fun. And the school, like, was not as equipped as we hoped to, like, handle all the coordination and stuff, like the communication. I don't know, just... they're still getting it together, it seems. So could be better. Did you sit there and think there should really be an app for managing this kind of communication? That would be something. Yeah. Not everyone seems to know how to use email. that could be problematic. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never gotten so many emails about like a specific thing as, recently, now that my daughter's going to school. Yeah. A lot. They're just like, there's just so many of them about all these different aspects of things. Do they put urgent everywhere? Because like I've got a whole inbox of urgent emails now. Oh no. Like they seem to be pretty on top of it. Like they're kind of like the whole COVID stuff puts a whole nother layer on top. Like I'm sure opening school is already like a lot of work. Yeah. But, they're scrambling around and like erecting tents on the blacktop so the kids can eat lunch outside and all this stuff. They've created an official channel for parents to raise their safety concerns with the school, because I think they were just getting bombarded by everyone. Yeah, I think that's where we are, and I'm hoping they come up with something like that, like some sort of process for raising concerns. Yeah, I wonder if we'll start seeing like a school board or maybe a school level position, right? Like pandemic coordinator,
right? And that's your point.
I really hope not. I hope it doesn't last long enough to like bake the position into society. But like, I guess like some sort of health coordinator, I could see that being a thing for sure. I guess, yeah. I mean, they could probably do other things when there's not a pandemic happening. I imagine still be useful.
Wouldn't be a full-time job is what you're saying.
Yeah, well.
Like I was surprised that like the school does offer like free like flu vaccine drive-through clinics, and like they do a lot of stuff that's just not just directly school, and that was a little bit surprising. I mean, it's awesome, but
maybe I need to move to Seattle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
we'll help you find a house.
Nice.
Yeah, it'll only cost you like $1 million.
Yeah. On the low end, right?
For a starter house.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, we could talk about one of the things that we were discussing this week was the Hook Relay launch. And I thought one interesting conversation we had was because we're making a few improvements to the sales site before we send out this email and like publish a blog post and do some like basic launch to our customers. And Ben, you've been working with like a contractor, or you found a contractor to do some website, like some redesigned stuff, because the website, we put it together kind of like, I don't know, what is it? It's a Tailwind. It's a Tailwind site. Just like Tailwind UI, fairly boilerplate and not really very polished. So we thought it would be cool to, kind of polish it up and rethink some of the content and make sure like everything flows together in terms of like call to actions and things like that. But we have a decision to make. Like, do we kind of just like do a little bit of work to make it launchable and then launch, or should we like go for this full redesign that the designer, of course, is trying to pitch us on? And I'm thinking that like ship it is the way to go. Make it shippable and then come back and we'll do the big overhaul.
Yeah, I've heard smart people say that if you're not embarrassed by what you ship, then you waited too long. So
yeah, so we're probably making a mistake by not just shipping it as is, huh?
So the current site, like if you look at there's only like 4 pages, right? Of the sales site. And of those 4 pages, the best looking one, I think, is the one that Kevin did. That's the documentation page. Put a lot of good work into that. And then the second best, I would say, is probably the guide that you wrote. So that's
because I copied Kevin. I copied Kevin's work.
And then I would say the next in series is the pricing page. I think it looks okay, but that's like straight from Tailwind based copy paste. Like we paid, $750 for the components, and then worth every penny, right? And then I would say the worst of all the pages is the homepage. And that's the page that's all me. Like I put that together. So I think it's pretty clear who needs to stay away from design at Honeybadger. It's Ben.
But in your defense, like you put that together like when the product was like barely even alpha, and we were like, we should really like buy a domain for this. And so you like wrote a little letter and put it on there, and we haven't revisited it since. So that's kind of what we're talking about, is just revisiting, making a few small changes, and then we'll get around to hopefully making something more professional, or I don't know. I mean, look who's talking.
But it's funny though, as I was working with that designer that we found to help us as we were like scoping out the project, I felt a bit of deja vu, but from the other side, because I remember as a freelancer, like I was always, pitching people on the project, and I would give them the grand vision and, and here's the price tag. And they'd be like, ooh, ow, could you cut, X, Y, and Z, could get the price down to whatever, And it wasn't about the price in this case. It was about time. We wanted to get that homepage done faster so that we could get this launch done sooner, rather than doing a whole redesign. But I still felt kind of guilty going back to the designer and say, okay, that's great, but could we, cut like all those pages and just do this one page?
It's not the price, the time frame. So are they going to be able? You think they'll be able to do a quick-ish turnaround, like so that we'll get to ship this thing?
Yeah, I think so. I made the mistake of not actually setting a deadline. So I realized that after I agreed and paid the deposit and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm like, I don't actually know when he's going to deliver stuff. That could be a problem. But I figured I'd just wait a few days because, I'm thinking it should only take a few days. What do I know? I'm not a designer, obviously. But I figured after a few days, if I see nothing or hear nothing, then I'll be like, okay, so what's the timeline? And hopefully it'll be something like, next week. But
this project is just like, is he already like, did you just have access to the GitHub repository, or is he like working something up like some sort of prototype or something like that?
Yeah, so he's gonna be doing a prototype. So first thing is he asked us, how do we want to get the design part? So like the choices were a PSD or Figma, and there also was a question in the onboarding was, okay, do you want me to build this out in HTML and CSS? And of course, yes, I want you to do more work for me. Thank you very much. So the first version is just a design in Figma, and actually 3. So he gave us the option of just doing one, like I'll do a design and you accept it or not, or doing 3 designs. I went for the 3 designs because I'm a client now, so I get to be deciding and stuff. So that will slow us down a little bit, obviously, because there's going to be 3 designs instead of 1. But we'll get those 3 designs.
But that's for like the big project, right? Or is he doing 3 for the initial?
Well, I think for the homepage.
Okay.
I think this basically. Yeah. I think what I was trying to communicate, I think I communicated, was what we want to do is basically a 2-stage project. Like we want to do the whole design, but we want the first stage to be, let's get the homepage set. So what I'm thinking is like the design that he goes with for the homepage will then carry through to the rest of the project, the rest of the pages. So
gotcha.
That's my hope.
Do you know, it sounds like he's more like he's going to be coding, if he's coding this up in HTML and CSS, like I wonder, he's probably not using, like, is he using anything to start with? Like, could he do this in Tailwind, for instance? Because that might be useful in the future if we want to take over, if we want to do some, of our own design in the future, which, what we're capable of is basically Tailwind or Bootstrap.
Yeah, I didn't specify to use Tailwind. I didn't really care at the moment. I just wanted whatever is fastest.
Makes sense.
And I figure if we decide to revisit and do some structural stuff, we can always adapt it to Tailwind ourselves. Like that kind of thing I can do. I can take an existing design and I can rework it, So I figured just get it out the door, get it done as quickly as possible. I don't care what you do, and then we can revisit if we need to.
Cool. Well, I'll be once we get the whole thing redone, that'll be nice. I don't know. We've never really done that. Like we've on Honeybadger IO, we've always just done it ourselves.
A new venture for us to try.
Yeah.
Try this sort of thing. It's great. I like experiments. So we had speaking of experiments, we had an experiment that did not work out. And I suppose we should talk about it. We decided that the outbound sales effort is not working out for us. So I worked with Harris at Intro CRM. We've talked about this on the podcast before. And Harris is great. Intro CRM is great. 100% recommend Harris and his team. If you're thinking about doing some sales stuff and you want some training, some coaching, or you want someone to help you do it, all those things are great. But after having done sales work with Harris, I just realized it's probably not going to work for us. Maybe it's me, maybe it's our business, maybe it's our customer segment, maybe it's a combination of all those things. But Harris and I told Harris, it's just not working out. We need to turn this down and turn it off. And Harris was like, yeah, I was getting the feeling based on the response rate, which is 0, that it just wasn't working. And so on Tuesday, I had a great call with Harris and we just did a postmortem, basically the whole project, and why didn't it work like we were hoping it would work? And it was a blameless postmortem. I don't think there was any particular fault. I think there are factors like we sell primarily to developers, and developers usually don't want to be talked to, right? They don't want to talk to a salesperson. They don't really want to get unsolicited stuff. And so that's a factor. I think also the nature of our product, you don't really need a salesperson to explain to you exception monitoring, right? It's if you go to the car dealership and you're looking for an Accord, you don't really need to spend a lot of time with a salesperson as he explains to you what an Accord does. You know what an Accord does, right? It's a car. If I know I want an Accord versus a Camry, I don't need any help, right? Just tell me the car. And I think it's the same kind of thing here. It's we're not selling something that's really complicated or that needs a lot of education or needs a lot of configuration or whatever. It's not a solution-based sales, which I think would be a better fit for that kind of sales process. So, and there are other factors, but so that's an experiment that I think it didn't work out.
It seems like we're really positioned to sell to the developers, and it's not that we couldn't I mean, we could try to sell ourselves to, because it seems like depending on the size of team that's using a tool like this, like you get people in the organization higher up that get involved, like managers or like product managers or like engineering leads and stuff that are trying to do more of the like management and coordination stuff. And those are the people that like the dashboards and the SAML and like all the more enterprisey features, but we don't typically like lead. That's not how our product is positioned. We haven't positioned ourselves to sell to that level, really, it seems. And yeah, I don't know. That's kind of interesting because you wonder at some point, like if the developers are deciding what tool to buy, do they buy the same tool as like their bosses? And we're trying to like give the developers what they want, maybe more than we're trying to give their bosses what they want. Right. And we try to build those features too, so that we can keep everyone happy. But like, it's kind of a different, like you could see, like trying to take the same approach with like someone higher up the ladder or whatever. I could see that not being as interesting.
And there are other factors. Like one of the things that Harris taught me about sales is he said the money is in the follow-up. Basically, like you need to keep reaching out to the same people basically until they tell you to go away. And that's not what I'm about. And I don't really want to do that to people. Like we created an email sequence and Harris was like, well, we need to do an email sequence like this. And it's like N emails long. And I'm like, how about 2? We send one and then we send one more and that's it. And Harris is like, so I think in many ways, like I was tying his hands because I didn't want to do the kind of sales process that a lot of people do, right?
Well, I imagine like putting your face on those emails, probably like you don't want like to make a bunch of enemies of developers that you might have to work with in the future. But right. Like, did you consider just like making a completely fictional salesperson persona? And it could have just been like, we could have put them on the sales page and everything. It's just like this fictional person that takes all the heat for sales.
I never thought of that. That's a great idea.
Because that's
Bobby the Badger.
Yeah, maybe that's like a side, like, kind of an upsell offering that Harris can add to his productized thing. Like, if you don't want to take the heat, like we can create someone for you.
That's an awesome idea. I'll forward that on. And another factor is, because there are companies where we have competitors that are selling into the enterprise and doing that sort of thing. And I think you hit on a point there. It's like, are we selling the typical enterprise solution where the buyer has to be happy? Or are we selling something where the user has to be happy, right? And sometimes they're both happy, but oftentimes it isn't. And in our case, we're focusing on that end user, and it doesn't make that user happy if we're pestering them with emails or, getting in their way of actually just trying the product. And so anyway, I think for now, at least, we are better served as a 100% inbound kind of company, and maybe spend those resources on customer success or engagement or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting,
but it was fun while it lasted.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't a complete drag. You got to learn a little bit about sales. Yeah. I imagine. Yeah. Competition, just like we're in such a competitive space, and most of our competitors also go for those like enterprise segments. So it could actually be, it could be good for us to stay focused on the smaller, like, the smaller end of the market in a way, because they're probably somewhat underserved at this point.
All right. So when is the Hook Relay launch? TBD. Or does it have a fixed date? Okay. So we don't know when to tell
people. We're meeting next week to kind of finalize it, but I'm imagining like we're going to push it out the door as soon as we have, I think we're going to wait for a few updates to the homepage, but otherwise we're going to ship it. And who knows, like if this project ends up kind of dragging on at all or anything, like we could just decide to, kind of just go what we have. It's workable. So maybe we should just like stop procrastinating, but we'll decide next week at our marketing meeting.
Yeah, the good news is we already have customers who are using it, who are paying us money to use it. So that's nice. Like, it's not just burning cash with a rack of servers, doing nothing.
Mm-hmm. So I would say it's in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure when that happens, we'll be blowing horns and making all sorts of noise on this show. and
Yeah,
directing
probably.
people to the right place. Well, y'all have been listening to FounderQuest. If you want to go rate us on Apple Podcasts or whatever the kids are calling it these days, go for it. And yeah, we'll catch you next week. Thank you.
FounderQuest is a weekly podcast by the founders of Honeybadger. Zero instrumentation, 360-degree coverage of errors, outages, and service degradations for your web apps. If you have a web app, you need it. Available at honeybadger.io. Want more from the founders? Go to FounderQuestPodcast.com. That's one word, where you can access our huge back catalog of episodes. FounderQuest is available on iTunes, Spotify, and other purveyors of fine podcasts. We'll see you next week.